Okay, so as we continue our kind of brute force character animating here, I have to remember where I am. So I puppet warped him, I painted his shadow. Even with the soft brush, the shadow's a little hard-edged. So I might take my opacity down a little bit more and increase my size. And we're all coughing.
Sorry, I'll just go home.
All right.
Oh my God, it's gonna come to me.
Okay, so on my next one, I'm going to paint in that shadow. Those brush settings seem to work a little bit better. I'm going to puppet warp, but I'm going to try to be a little less. I'm going to just try to speed up my puppet warping now that you guys know what it's about. And it's just nipping and tucking. Because our creatures, if they're designed well, they have believable anatomy. And we nip and tuck. We're losing control in the room here.
Oh yeah. We're all losing our minds. I have a question. Is anyone gonna get that Szechuan sauce from Saturday? Oh, I got that.
There's only 2 locations that have it.
Really? In San Antonio?
Yeah, in San Antonio, there's only 2 locations.
One's by Ben Jackson, right?
One's Van Jackson, the other one's on the south side of San Antonio.
Do you think it's gonna be crowded?
I think it'll sell out.
I need that. Oh. Can somebody like bring it to class maybe? Just like grab us a bunch. I don't know.
No, it's limited. Very
Only
limited.
for one day.
It's 1 day.
One day. I might, if I get a lot, I might bring some for all you guys.
I think they only let you grab 1.
One.
Yeah. Depending on how much you want.
Sorry, that was a weird sound.
All right, so since I put the eyelids already on, since I already have them positioned, I can put the shadow in and the puppet warps pretty darn quickly. And I don't even necessarily need to move each aspect. I just need to anchor it enough so he doesn't distort too much as he's frolicking. So almost done here. Now that he's back on the ground, I don't need to worry about the shadow so much because I already had that built in. And then I have to animate it with the rain. And this is, remember the big picture, remember your storyboard and what you're trying to do with each aspect. This is the beginning of my animation. And what I'm trying to show is that he likes this environment. It's kind of his environment. So that when the T-Rex comes, it's a big surprise. So here he seems like a little bit higher off the ground. So I'm going to try to use Puppet Warp to stretch him a little bit. Make it look like he's jumped. And to do that, you just kind of pull up on your different anchor points. And it will shift the spine. That's why we talk so much about the figure template. So there, you see like he's jumping. Oh, he's ready. He's ready. But before digital animation, you would have to have someone redraw each of these little changes. 24 frames per second. In fact, in the beginning of animation with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first feature film, and like Max Fleischer's Superman, they did 36 frames, which was just too many. And things looked really smooth and beautiful, but they weren't as believable as if they made it a little bit choppier. So even though live action is shot at a higher frame rate, animation standard frame rate remains 24 frames per second. Which we could match here, but I'm not doing enough in-betweens. That would look way too fast. So I do more like 3 frames per second for a GIF animation. 3 to 5. And I'm going to show you that as soon as I set the rain in the background for all of this movement test. We're going to run a little test animation. And you can see where you can affect the timing and all of those parameters. You actually have quite a bit of control. Quite a bit of control. All right. So, now I'm back to where I started. This is going to be frame 9, layer 9. All the texture overlays are turned on. I don't want to overdo it. I want rain 2 or rain splash 2. Let's go ahead and start doubling them up. And turn on rain 2. And then use the marquee. So always make sure I get all of it. I'm going to start outside of it. Hold down Shift, make sure it's a square, and follow my guides. And you can turn your guides on and off with Command semicolon. Go to my topmost turned on layer, which is always going to be the character for me. Hold down Option, say Layer, Merge Visible, duplicate, bring it over. I'm going to start saying that each time, but you'll see what I'm doing. Lock it into place. Check that something changed. Weird. That's not what I expected. Huh. Let's try this. Yeah, it's more like what we're going to do. Okay. Let's add an extra frame in there. Now we're going to move to this one. I change the rain. Go to splash 3, turn off splash 2. Maybe turn off splash 1 as well. Go to rain 3. Do the whole merge thing. Whole duplicate thing, the whole move thing. And then you can always check it in your stage just by turning that layer on and off. Yep, that works. Next. I delete these 2 merged layers. I move up 1. Change the rain to splash 1 and splash. Let's leave 1 and 3 on. Let's turn only rain 1 on. Let's do the whole thing. Hold down Option. Layer Merge Visible. Easy to get lost. Just make sure you understand each step, and you can figure it out if you lose your place. The most common mistake in animation is doing more work than you need to do, which isn't always the worst thing, right? The dire sin in animation is leaving something out, and that's awful. So it's better to be methodical and maybe a little too cautious. But I also don't want you to get so ambitious with this that you're just going nuts trying to figure out all these elements. I have a few too many elements. If this was my first time animating, this would drive me nuts. And I'm actually just going to make an executive call here. At this point, I'm ready to say this is all I need for camera moves. And so I'm going to shift it in and just make my asset file now into my hero file on both sides. So I don't have to do that extra step of selecting it out. Now, I do that, and what I can do is say File, Save As, Assets Cropped. So if I ever do need to go back and use that, I can, like when my dinosaur comes in. But that will help this go a little bit faster now. Okay, so he's moved quite a bit in this position. So I'm going to turn on Rain Splash. I don't remember where it was. That looks different. Does the rain look different? No. Let's change the rain. That's what's nice about a cycle. You can vary it up. It doesn't always need to go in the exact same order, depending on what it is. A rain cycle doesn't need to go in the same order. So now that I have it all cropped, I have this easier step. I can simply hold down Option, say Layer Merge Visible, and then just take that whole layer over. I don't need to do the extra selection. And then I just have to delete that layer for moving on to the next. I'm playing with the rain. Okay, so I want to show you how to do an animation test, and I'm almost ready. Got a few more frames to bring over. So let me show you that animation test. I'm going to save this where it is. Because it's a low resolution, it doesn't take long to save it all. Now, in my stage file, this is how animating works. Because so far we've just built layers. I have 13 frames. Now I want to see how they play, right, in sequence. So I go to Window, and I go to Timeline. In my timeline, I'm going to stretch it out and nest it on the bottom here. I'm going to choose frame animation. We're learning just brute, simple frame-by-frame animation. And we say create frame animation. Then we use the window options on the timeline, and we say make frames from layers. Okay? And what it will do is it will output one frame for each layer we have. Then I can hold down Shift, select all of them, set the timing for each frame. My default timing is 0.3 seconds, about a third of a second, about 3 frames per second. Then I want to play it through forever, so it just loops over and over again, so I can kind of scrutinize it. Then I hit play. There's my guy. The rain looks believable. The rain splashes look a little spotty. So maybe I should always have 2 of those on. The shadow is moving with him. He blinks. He jumps. That seems all pretty good. So once you have an animation test that works, you hit stop. And then this is the important part. You select all your frames and you drag them to the trash within the timeline.